This is an Eye on Annapolis special update.
All right, this is another in-person podcast. We're on the back deck talking with Jared Littmann, who is the owner of K&B True Value Hardware, and Dave Marberger, who is the owner of Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits, both down in Annapolis. But before we get into talking what we want to talk about, and it's sort of supply side and how we get product during a COVID-19, let's get to the important stuff. And thank you guys very much for what you're doing for the schools. Jared, you started this program many, many moons ago where your customers could donate a portion of their sales to name your school in the area. And K&B True Value would match a certain dollar amount. And this year, you guys agreed to match up to $5,000. And you've provided, I don't even know how much the total dollars is, but it's significant.
Over $30,000 so far to local schools.
Over $30,000 so far? Yep. That's unbelievable. Well,
previous years. So it's been up to $30,000 total from previous years. This year, I think we're going to hit $30,000 this year by itself.
Is that switch on the microphone up, like toward the top?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Now it is.
Okay, cool. And sometime along the line this year, you went over and you pinned Dave down in the parking lot and said...
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. So in past years, we had asked customers for donations, and with our cap of $5,000, we'd always get close and around $5,000 by the end of the 2 months that we do it in October. And so it worked out nicely, and we'd match the $5,000 and deliver $10,000 to local schools. And that's the way it worked the past couple of years. We had done different iterations that weren't as successful before that. This year, we started out the same way, except we were closing in on that $5,000 in the early part of September. And I didn't want to end the program early or mislead customers into suggesting that their donations would be matched once we already hit the $5,000. So I approached David, and he was immediately interested in the program and agreed to sign on, which I was very thankful for. And so now, at that point, we could tell our customers, if you donate up to $10,000, it'll be matched $5,000 from K&B True Value, $5,000 from Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits. We're now over $8,000, approaching $9,000 in customer donations. So I sought a third sponsor, and I found one in Severn Bank. And so now we...
And you beat up Alan Hyatt in the parking lot.
Yeah. And Alan was likewise very interested in supporting our local schools as well, and signed on for the next $5,000. So the first $5,000 K&B is matching, the second $5,000 Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits is matching, and hopefully we'll have up to $15,000, and that last $5,000 Severn Bank will match.
So in the end, if all things go well, there's $30,000 that's looking to go to our local schools this year. And it's not limited to public schools. It's, whatever school is in the area. I mean, you've got St. Mary's and St. Anne's and Key, and of course all the public schools that are there, Annapolis High or Georgetown, Germantown.
Yep. And a lot of people don't necessarily donate to the school that their kid is in. We've had a lot of people ask, which of the schools are most in need, and we have our opinions about that. And so we have been able to get a good portion of money designated to all of the public schools.
Well, way to go on a great program. Way to go to join in on this and doing something for the schools. Because, the schools are going to need it, when they figure out what they're doing ultimately.
In particular, when you take a look and you listen to all the changes, the virtual learning, the virtual classrooms, there's not going to be a better time, and I'm not quite sure that's the right way to say it, but there's not going to be a time when the schools are more in need of financing.
Than it is right now.
Than it is right now, without a doubt. So,
And from the school district, they're going to get the bare minimum.
Yes.
And obviously, that's a budgetary thing. You can't do it, so they do rely on the
everything
generosity.
During COVID is more. So everything that was hard is harder than it was. Everything that was expensive before is more expensive. And these were schools that had needs before this, and they were using previous donations for very good purposes, for different technology needs, incentive programs for students, rewards, to help teachers be creative and do something extra special. And now with all the extra demands, they're going to just need more of everything.
From me, from the community, from everybody, thank you guys very much for stepping up to the plate and hitting a home run, to use a baseball euphemism, which is being played now. So I'm kind of happy about that.
I appreciate that. And just to make sure the plug is accurate, we're asking customers to shop at K&B True Value, and when they're at checkout, to make their donation to their local school. And that's all the donations are at K&B True Value.
Okay. And that goes through the end of October, right?
Correct.
Very cool. Well, what we wanted is this whole podcast started from an email that Jared and I were going back and forth on about how you get stuff in and what's the deal. I mean, I think you sent an email saying, hey, we've got like Lysol. And it was just like, okay, this, flashbacks to like when there was toilet paper. It was like toilet paper. There's a mass people running across town because somebody's got toilet paper. And we got to talking about just the products and how they come in. I mean, you were fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, depending on how you want to look at it, I guess, to remain open. You were an essential business, as were you, Dave, with Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits. You did choose to shut down for a period to figure out what you...
We closed our doors to customers coming in the store, but we remained open to do business. It was all via telephone or and then that translated to either curbside pickup or delivery. So, yes, we were still doing business.
And that's what you started out with as well, right?
We had just almost exactly the same time frame and the same thought process, except we also have a website. So we were closed to foot traffic for about 6 weeks from the last week of March through May 9th. We reopened a little sooner than David did, and between that time, those 6 weeks, we were taking orders from phones, from the website, emails, and satisfying them through curbside and home delivery. And as I've described it to people, it's about double the work for half the sales.
Yeah, well, that's the way it goes, I guess, in the pandemic. But
I also want to caveat that anything I say that comes out as a gripe or a complaint, in the bigger context, I know our business has been incredibly fortunate to be able to stay open. And so, I realize the bigger picture, other businesses have had it much worse. And so just for context, I don't mean a gripe when I know we've had it extremely fortunate.
No, without a doubt. I mean, anybody, no matter what level of business they're operating at this point, they're at a deficit and they're facing challenges, and every business is challenged a little bit differently. But we want to talk about the supply chain. I mean, the thing blew my mind is, the way toilet paper ran out. And I read an article recently, and this would be more geared toward you, Jared, is that Lysol wipes, the name brand wipes, they said they're not going to be available till like 2022 or something crazy like that. And I'm thinking, okay, well, the rush for wipes is down. I mean, they're not recommending, wiping down our oranges with Lysol wipes or the cereal boxes and everything else that they did initially. Why aren't these guys, what's the deal with the supply chain? Where is it breaking?
Well, I think I'd have a hard time answering that specific case of Lysol wipes, but I could speak more generally that you have so many different factors. Obviously, demand on some of those products is way up. And so you can't just, again, we get to, from Lysol's perspective, would you expect them to create a new facility to generate something that has this extra demand for a short amount of time, and by the time they make that investment and have a new facility, new production capability, maybe that demand disappears and they don't get a return on their investment. So that's difficult. You also have a raw ingredient supply problem. So I don't know what all of the necessary ingredients that they're using, but I know like the ethyl alcohol or the methanol alcohol, I'm blanking on which alcohols they were using, was hard to get for a long time in just its raw form, let alone the other supplies. Then you have to get each of those raw ingredients from one place to another. And so if a facility, and there were some facilities for some companies in Mexico that closed down completely. So if you can't get your raw ingredient shipped to you, then you can't make your final product. So you have all these different, every piece had its own strains in ways that you could not even fathom. So a company like Lysol would agree to ship to its various partners in the same proportions that they had previously bought. So if if your entity was always buying 2%, they weren't going to suddenly give you 5% or 10% of their production because they want to be fair to all their distribution partners.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Well, I know that, Dave, when we talked one time before on a podcast, we talked briefly about sort of second-guessing the customers as far as ordering your inventory and figuring out, what you need to stock, what's going to be the hot seller this spring or what.
Everything that we stock in our store, we buy based off of historical records. And to some degree, those records were basically thrown out the window when this pandemic started. For example, bag-in-the-box wine, or wine that's served in a bag that comes in a box. Nationwide, there was a huge run on bag-in-the-box wine to the point where the manufacturers just couldn't keep up. I mean, you can't just snap your fingers and make more grape juice appear and turn it into wine overnight. So the manufacturer certainly struggled, and the switch went from 750 or 1.5 liter size bottles to those bag-in-the-boxes. I guess people were looking stocking up.
And of course,
it is a little bit more economical to buy it that way. But back in the early stages, as we were discussing a couple minutes ago, there were so many unknowns. Would this be their last purchase opportunity to buy wine? How long will that wine have to last? When will it be available again?
That's true.
So it was very difficult to gauge. And I think people's buying patterns and habits has certainly leveled back off to what our records more clearly indicate. But there was certainly a period of time where you never knew. Clos de Bois 1.5s, we were out for months because our supplier was out. Corona, Modelo beer, of all things, margarita mix, certain tequilas. Production facilities in Mexico shut down for a period of time. And when you let a brand like Corona or Modelo, when you let that pipeline run dry, it's almost impossible to play catch up and to get that pipeline stocked up again. We're still having issues with those brands of beer.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, so you are still seeing, even though we seem to have gotten on a somewhat level playing field. I mean, I know now when I get up in the morning, I need to get my mask on. I need to, we sort of know the rules that we need to play by. Are you finding that you're still finding that little hammer has been for your material, your supplies?
Oh, sure. There's still some supply issues that we see.
There's some businesses that are never going to recover. Shopvac has closed its doors. A company, you might not know the name brand, Genova, makes PVC pipe. They closed their doors just before this, and like in February, for good. So there was a scramble in the plastic resin business to make up for that business.
Shopvac's not in business anymore?
Shopvac is closed.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's businesses that are just closed for good, and there's the customer might not realize the impacts, but all of a sudden we're scrambling. Who else? Unfortunately, we've been buying this VacMaster as an alternative for some time, so it wasn't that hard of a pivot for us. But there's going to be permanent changes for businesses who couldn't just cope. Or had whatever problems, production facility problems, driver problems, transportation issues, personnel work shortages, personnel turnover. Just everything was just more difficult.
Well, going back to Jared's point, raw materials, I had heard rumor, and I don't know whether this is fact or fiction, but I had heard rumor that Amazon had purchased all of the available cardboard that they could get their hands on, because, of course, more people were doing more shopping online. Amazon needs boxes to ship their products in. So a lot of our a lot of our distributors and suppliers, they didn't have cardboard to put their packaging in. Aluminum cans, same scenario. There was aluminum shortage. And as a matter of fact, there was an aluminum, what I'll call, challenge before COVID hit. So then COVID hit, and now all of a sudden it just exasperates that issue.
The paper one is an interesting one because before COVID, I knew the people who make like paper leaf bags and paper bags for the checkout counter were anticipating shortages because a lot of government jurisdictions have banned plastic bags for leaf collection or banned plastic bags at checkout, which was great, but it had the consequence that paper was in already high demand for those two purposes. And so I didn't even think about the cardboard perspective, but it's the same industry.
Yeah. So everybody was scrambling to find the product. Some manufacturers may have had plenty of liquid to put in cans and plenty of liquid to put in cans and then put in cardboard, but they didn't have the cans, nor did they have the cardboard. So now what do you do?
Yeah. Wow. Well, to your point, Jared, as far as the packaging goes, I mean, with all the restaurants now pivoting to takeout and, the jurisdictions, Maryland, or not Maryland, I don't think Maryland had gone yet, but I mean, Anne Arundel County certainly had and got rid of the polystyrene, and Annapolis had. So I imagine their cardboard takeaway boxes were probably a little bit in demand, as well as the paper straws and everything else.
If I could add in, it's a little bit off the supply issue, but just want to point out as far as changing needs. So people are increasingly buying online from Amazon and distribution centers like that. Let's just say Amazon, for instance. And so I get the benefits. It's more convenient. A lot of times the shipping window is very small. You don't have to leave your house. You're worried about mask wearing and COVID. But the effect of that is now you're seeing all these businesses that are closing, and now people are like, well, I can't go buy a suit someplace. I can't buy a dress someplace because the stores that were open to sell those things no longer have the demand. And so you see this huge change in retail needs that isn't going to bounce back. It's not like
Has your online business increased through this?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Now you aren't allowed because of the stupid laws in Maryland to sell alcohol online. I mean, you could probably take an order to pick up.
So, I guess to tack on to the Amazon-like conversation, and I guess to answer your question specifically, our website, we do not have an e-commerce website, but that is shifting. So within the first month, we said, you know what, we're behind the ball, and we are now creating a Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits app that you can download to your phone. So you will be able to order through that portal. Our website will turn to an e-commerce site. Now, I still can't ship to Frederick, Maryland, but I can do local delivery. And curbside pickup is here to stay. A lot of the app will be either for local delivery or for curbside pickup. That's a terminology, curbside that I guess we did it in the sense that you could have called and said, hey, can you set a case aside, and here's my credit card number, and I'll be by later on to pick it up. But the actual stopping up at the curb and then walking it out, that part, was just remolded, I guess. But
that introduced its own challenges. All of a sudden, we needed space. I mean, we were both set up to do retail with, I'm imagining you have a small warehouse space, but mostly your retail. Same with us. Well, now we needed all the space to queue up or stage
storage,
the curbside orders and
prepaid
the delivery orders,
yeah.
and how to be efficient on delivery. And those are just challenges that we hadn't dealt with before, which good problems to have. Glad to have the business, but it was just reusing space. And then when we went back to opening, I don't know if you probably dealt with this too, we still had all these orders queued up for delivery, but partly on the retail space. But now we had to welcome customers back in.
Walking around other customers' bags of
and so we had to figure that out.
There are challenges everywhere, and the curbside delivery and the carryout. I mean, I think, in looking into the restaurant business, that whole model has totally changed. And I've talked to several of them. They said that they're doing 70 to 80% of their current business, which is certainly down from before, as carryout. And I think the American people, the consumer, has realized, okay, I can get a good meal at the Annapolis Smokehouse. I can get it to take home, and I can put it on my dining room table and eat it. And it's going to be, aside from the waitress or the server coming in and serving me, it's going to be just as good as it was.
And the challenges, I got to imagine, for those restaurants are they don't get to charge people more money to do curbside, but they have more expenses. They have all those containers and utensils and that extra person that's got to be able to take the phone call and run that order in and out. So the restaurant, I've never been in the restaurant business, but think about all those extra costs they have to tack on without being able to raise their prices.
I've heard that a lot of restaurants may be looking to shift raise their prices for in-house dining because of the cost. Okay, at that point, then you do need to have a server, you do need to have silverware, you have to have a dishwasher to wash the dishes and whatnot. So, I can get a steak at Lunas's for $30 and walk up to the front door and they're going to give it to me. Or I can go up and eat it in their dining room. It's going to cost me $40. I don't know whether, anybody here is doing that, but I had read an article where they were talking about doing that, which is, interesting. I mean, it makes sense. It sort of recovers the cost. It gets back into that argument about these restaurants that pay the $2.75 an hour and make it up. Okay, well, let's pay what we need to pay these people to make sure that they can make a living. And
going back to the supply point that you want to focus on, a big problem that we have, and I'm curious if David's had the same issue, is we don't know how long customer demand will be on certain items. So, say face masks, for instance. We've been selling a lot of face masks. How many more, and for how long will people continue to want new face masks versus rewashing or reusing? Disinfectant. We for a while couldn't get any disinfectant. Now we got a lot of different options in. A lot of things might take 3 months to get in. I had to put my order in 2 months ago for the Christmas themed face masks. Inside, how many Christmas-themed face masks are people going to want to buy? I have no historical representative to your earlier point on that need or demand. I think people will like them. It'll be exciting, kind of add some cheer to it.
But if Governor Hogan spikes the space... Oh, there's a tough word to say. If Governor Hogan spikes the face masks next month, you're
exactly,
screwed.
Exactly. So I placed the order, had to buy it. Yeah, exactly. So we're reading the tea leaves. We don't need to get every decision right. We just need to get more of them right than not to make sure we can make up for the things. Like the first hand sanitizer that became available was the liquid hand sanitizer. I've still got hundreds of bottles left. No one wants liquid hand sanitizer more because the gel version became available. And fortunately, I have the Purell and the nice Purell gel hand sanitizer. I'm happy to sell it. but I've got all this liquid that I'm selling for $1 that cost me multiple dollars that I'm just trying to keep from having to pour down the drain, basically.
Wow, you would think that you could get that to some local businesses or something that.
Discounting huge percents just to, like I said, just to.
I mean, how do you forecast what you're looking for? I mean, obviously you've got supply chain issues where you're not sure whether you're going to get Corona or whether they can ship it in a box and whatnot. I mean,
things like the Corona and Modelo and the Margarita mix, I really have no control over that. Meaning, I could order one case, I could order 1,000 cases. I'm not going to get either. My distributor really doesn't have any control over that. They continue to order it. They just there's nobody from the supplier side that says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't hear you. Here's your 4 tractor trailer loads." So ours is a little bit more predictable. We haven't brought any additional stock or inventory into the store for ancillary products such as masks or hand sanitizers that we didn't carry before. Now, I will tell you, we use Lysol wipes or other sanitizing wipes. We go through 1,000 a day, wiping down every single hand cart, every single door handle, every single light switch, every single credit card terminal, every single keyboard. So we use those, 1,000 times more than what we were using them before. So going back to the supply chain issue, Lysol and other disinfectant wipes, there is a huge demand more now than there ever was before. And a lot of these manufacturers just can't keep up because my store is no different than grocery stores. They wipe everything. A lot of retailers should, I would say, are wiping it down, but I think should is probably a better word to use. Should certainly be wiping down everything in their store that they possibly can, commonly touched areas. So me needing more of those leads to Lysol not being able to keep up with their production. And Lysol is just a name brand that people gravitate towards. It's just a name that they know and they recognize and they trust. So, but there are certainly a wide variety of other sanitizing wipes that you can use.
Part of my point in mentioning just wasn't trying to complain about having a forecast. The point I was trying to build up to is if I've got to forecast what customers are going to want and for how long and how much, I may or may not, every business is different. They may not be willing to make that investment. So you were talking about going into stores and not finding stuff you need. It's partly because an individual business owner might say, you know what, I can't afford or I don't want to take that risk of being wrong. And so it doesn't get ordered because they don't know how long you're going to buy it for. Then you have other issues of sometimes you are buying so many things, you might have limitations on your credit, on how much the supplier is willing to extend to you. You might have limitations on your insurance coverage of being able to, how much, if you're making something and you can't sell it. I read about this actually in one of the, that if you're making something, their insurance was limiting their ability to ship to a retailer that wasn't paying cash up front for the product because they could only extend so much credit to their various distributors. Wow. So that was, I wasn't just trying to complain about having to make these predictions. I'm just saying it adds in an extra layer of
There's so many
choices.
moving parts to this.
Yeah.
And, you talked about the usage of the wipes and whatnot, Dave, and I've got to think that that's got to add just, your cleaning bill. I mean, let's talk, okay, the PPE could be almost a one type, but I mean the cleaning and the labor involved in cleaning down. And I think of both of your places. I mean, you with a gazillion bottles, and I don't think I'm exaggerating cans, too much, and you with probably a gazillion boxes and little wrappy things and stuff. I mean, obviously you're not, wiping down every bolt and every can.
But we do run a fogger at night. To try to target that, and then during the day we're doing what David was describing as far as wiping commonly touched surfaces down throughout every day, every hour, and then at night running a fogger throughout the whole store. Right.
So when you're checking out, that countertop is wiped down because the customer probably put their hand down or futched with their wallet. And
yeah, I mean we spent the money on 2. They're called hydroxylator fans. And I'll wow you with a little bit of information. It's actually technology that's used on the space shuttle to purify the air and keep odors out and to eliminate germs. It's built off of that same technology. Well, we have 2 of them. The two of them combined cost us about $5,000. Now, that wasn't an expense that I had budgeted for.
Sure.
But it's one of those things where it makes us who are in the store all day long feel a little bit more comfortable. And I hope that it makes our customers feel more comfortable, and it kills the germs that may be laying around the store. But that's not something that I budgeted for. It wasn't anything that I planned for, just part of what you have to do. And the wipes are included. You know, even though I have those fans running, I still wipe everything down all the time, all day long.
It's just so far-reaching. It's like a giant game of whack-a-mole. You know, you hit something down, and up pops another issue that you need to deal with. What does it look like? I mean, we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know when we're going to get a vaccine or get it under control, or it's just going to go away. You know, whatever happens. I mean, you're just going to continue to do the best you can. I mean, I guess that's all any business can do.
Yeah, yes, doing the best we can and making decisions as we go. We're planning as if people are going to be wearing masks and living in this environment for another 6 months. That I don't see anything changing. Less than that. Even if there's a vaccine, that it'll need to be distributed and adopted and proven before we feel safer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not first in line on that one. That's for sure.
Right. So yeah. Even if we started each taking the vaccine, it's still going to, they've got to make millions and millions, a few hundred million for this country alone, let alone the demands elsewhere. But yeah, the hard part is that some goods are made overseas, as we know. So if you're placing orders and you're doing it you got to do it months in advance. That's what we're projecting, 6 months at least.
Yeah, our buying is a little bit more predictable, although there are certain circumstances. The way the patterns of buying go for us is, filling the Chateau ABC winery. I basically can buy that all month long, and as long as my distributor is not coming to me saying, "Hey, listen, we're going to run out," there's no need for me to panic buy, and I can follow my normal buying patterns. Now, if a distributor does come to me and says, "Listen, this product is going to be gone," but we still have some in inventory, sure, we'll take a position on it. How big of a position depends upon the rate of sales of that particular product. If it's something that I don't sell a tremendous amount of, I might take another case or two. If it's something that we sell a lot of, I'll obviously take a much larger position. Sure. My eggnog, I have to order a lot of my eggnog actually in the month of August when it's 96 degrees outside. That's when I have to forecast and give my order quantities to be received in October or November. I sat down and had a conversation with Anthony Clark from Galway Bay about his eggnog specifically. And it's a seasonal item. It sells very well during the holidays. But what are the holidays going to look like? True. Your Christmas trees, your lights, your wreaths, all Christmas decorations. You're not packing up the family to go to your aunt and uncle's house or grandma's house for Thanksgiving. So a lot of the people in the Annapolis community that would be traveling will now be here in town. And those people that would have come into town aren't coming to town now. Does that mean that instead of having a dinner for 24 people, is it only going to be the 3, 4, 5, 6 of you? Same thing for Christmas. What am I, I will assume as of today's date that Christmas parties aren't going to happen, or at least not the way that we've known them to be. So how big of a position do I take on eggnog? How big of a position do I take on, my sparkling wines, champagnes? But on the other side, for me, compared to Jared's products, I know I'm going to sell that product eventually. And I wouldn't take such a big enough position that I would be, strapped
sitting on it for 5 years or something. Yeah. Well, what is the eggnog? I know Anthony's eggnog comes from Ireland. I don't know whether all eggnog does, and you'd mentioned you've got a lot of foreign products that come in there, and I know the transportation certainly for travel between most countries in the United States is not really happening. If I need a case of French wine, what's that, coming over on a slow boat?
It was at first. I think that's eased a little bit, and imported wine was also caught. Not just wine, but imported products were also caught up in our industry with the tariffs that were added. So there was a little bit of that slowdown that started even pre-COVID. and then it again was highlighted a little bit during the height or the peak or the beginning, whatever the right terminology is, of COVID. But things have loosened up. We're still not finding, rosés. Our rosé selection, we happen to focus more on imported, small produced French rosés. We didn't have the selection that we had last year. Some of them never made it to the United States. Some of them we just opted not to bring in, not knowing what our customer traffic was going to be like. It's a little bit easier for us. I'm guessing that, Jared, you with your face masks or other items like that, it's a little bit more difficult.
Looking at patio heaters as an example, you can't get a patio heater now. Someone back in July mentioned
cross that off my list.
Yeah, someone back in July said, as all these outdoor gatherings happen in colder weather, people are going to want some patio heaters. You might want to get some. I cleared out whatever inventory I could from my distributor, and I brought in, what I could. I've now sold through all the patio heaters I brought in, and I can't get any more. So I guess my message to customers is plan ahead. We've got fire pits back in stock, but fire pits have been in huge demand. At some point, I won't be able to get any more. Think about ahead of what you're going to look like, and don't wait to buy.
I'm sitting here. My head right now is just sort of at the end of summer, and the weather's starting to break a little bit cooler. But I really should be thinking more like New Year's.
Yes. Yeah. You got to think now. I think to whether it's eggnog or fire pits. Yeah, you got to start thinking ahead. Now basics like toilet paper is easier to get now, and that's not as a seasonal item. So I don't think retailers worry about having too much. And basic things, I sell air filters, just as a random example. I don't think you're going to have an issue, but it's more of the seasonal type of stuff. You need to be thinking about 3-4 months in advance now.
Here's a question on toilet paper. I don't know whether any of you guys would know this answer, but we obviously had the issue with it where there were stores that were generous enough to be giving away like one roll for a customer and different things like that. And we had that big shortage for whatever reason, but now it seems that it's all over there. And I know the local Giant where I shop, they've got pallets, and it's imported from Mexico, Mexican toilet paper. Why hasn't Scott and Charmin gotten back up onto the production level? I mean, the demand has eased a little bit, unless it's, unless it's a buying decision on the behalf of Giant where they might be able to get it for less money.
I don't have a complete answer for you, but I could just tell you pieces of it are just like I was talking about earlier about redoing your whole manufacturing process. You got to go back to the thought. The toilet paper making companies were making a certain amount for offices and a certain amount for residential use. Now, all that toilet paper people buying for offices and commercial use isn't being used, and so they've had to increase the amount they need for residential use. So it's a huge shift in their production capability. We were talking earlier, maybe it was off the record, about the demands on the paper and pulp industry on making paper bags and cardboard. Was that was on the record?
That was here.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if it was on the record
where that
yet or
evil
not.
Jeff Bezos was buying up all the all the cardboard.
Yeah, so I don't know if we were on the record yet or not. But yeah, paper supplies are really tough right now to get adequate supplies of. So that's part of the toilet paper making industry.
I read a fascinating article I don't remember where it was, but they were talking about, I'm going to misquote what it was, but it was the white collar support industry, and it's like a $3 trillion industry, and it's in these cities, and it's the guy that shines shoes in the subway stop. It's the baristas in the Starbucks that are in a large office building. I know there's some buildings in Manhattan that have 2 or 3 Starbucks within the building on different floors that they're looking at ghost towns. And they did talk to a shoe shine guy, and he says, I would come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would leave here at 8 o'clock at night, and I'd just have my ass kicked. He says, if I can make it to 10 o'clock in the morning, he says, it's not even a part-time job. And they said, the office supplies have been decimated because people are going out there. And I, personally, I would not want to be a commercial real estate investor or an owner of commercial real estate. My daughter's company just had, they signed a lease. They haven't moved in yet, but they've got 3 floors at 30 Rock in New York. And I just out of curiosity, out of morbid curiosity, I looked up what commercial rental rates were up there, and this close to, I figure, they're paying about $750,000 per floor. So they're looking at $2.7 million a month for their employees to sit at home.
Right.
And
Yeah, and I think it's going to be fascinating, the change in how we do so many things once even COVID is solved, because not all businesses will go back to doing it the way they used to. There'll be some portion that is working from home, and so you'll have people realizing they could live in different places than they were. And then some people will see extra opportunities, whether to live in Manhattan or in D.C., that previously didn't make sense with office use the way it was. So I think it's going to be fascinating.
Well, I think a lot of people are doing this now, and they're realizing that businesses realize that they can get a lot of obviously not the retail stuff, but get a lot of business done remotely. And people are moving. Okay, I'm going to move out of that closet I'm renting in San Francisco for $5,000 a month, and buy a 200 or not buy, but rent a 200-acre ranch in Montana and see if I like it. And maybe that's live there for 2 months. Hey, I like it or I don't. And it's very interesting to see how people can do and how to react.
Yeah, people in general, all businesses are completely readjusting. Obviously, retail, restaurant, but I think every industry is completely readjusting. Where you work, to your point, if you want to rent or even buy some commercial real estate, I'm sure you can get it for a pretty good price right about now. But think about all that lost revenue, though, with any one commercial building. Think about the people that weren't paying their mortgages because they lost their jobs. Well, I mean, somebody's responsible for all that money. It has a stopping point, and you can't pass the buck all the way back to that person.
Right,
but
someone's losing it. The landlord's losing it if they had a
lose
mortgage.
Tax revenue, property tax. I mean, there's all of it. It's all interconnected in some way, shape, or form, and it all goes back to production. Some of it's all interconnected. If you can't get cans to put your beer in, and you can't get the cardboard shippers to place it,
you're dead in the water.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I've talked to a couple of people that have had landlords, and it's funny, the buildings that are owned, the landlords tend to be a lot more reasonable versus the ones that have the mortgage, because the banks aren't really being reasonable to them. I know I talked to one business in Eastport that the building was recently sold, and they've got several different tenants, and they're like, yeah, no, I mean, you signed the agreement and rent's going up today. And it's like, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. It says, yeah, but we've got that agreement. And then there's another one that says, yeah, no, as soon as this hit, I cut them down 75%. And now I'm slowly bringing them back
Depends
up.
upon how much of the principal still owed on that business.
Yeah, exactly.
Or on that property.
Exactly. Well, and the other thing that I've noticed a lot when shopping, and we'll just say like a Best Buy or something like that, and it would sort of apply to you. It doesn't apply to you, but it would your type of a business more so than yours, Dave. But they're pushing people to online, okay? I look online or something like that. I want a widget or something like that at Best Buy or a microphone. And I go there and they don't have it. But they say, hey, we can either transfer it from another store in, and you can pick it up, and that'll be a day or two. Or we can ship it right to your house directly there. And, I mean, they're just not taking the stake in inventory anymore. And I think that's going to be a real mind shift for consumers, because, I mean, we like to go out, and, I mean, I go into your store all the time, and, can I help you? I said, no, I'm just looking at beer. I'm looking at cool labels. I'm looking to see what is new and interesting and might excite me. I'm not looking for a specific recommendation. I'm not saying, my palate is feeling like an IPA or whatever it is. And I think that we're going to change in, that type of a thing where we're not able to, the touch and the feel. And that's the thing that really frightens me.
If you're a large company like a Best Buy or a Home Depot, you can do that because all that money still stays within the family, right? You have that, you can send that customer home and they can still buy from Home Depot or from Best Buy. But when you talk about small businesses, we lose that. That's instantly revenue that's lost to us. So, as much as I want to make it convenient, and Jared wants to make it convenient for a customer to buy online, we still want them to buy online from us.
Oh, without a doubt. America starts on Main Street, and Main Street could be Bay Ridge Road, it could be Main Street, West Street, or Maryland Avenue. It doesn't matter what it is. And it is just so essential for our businesses, for our people to support our local businesses. And, I mean, that could be some franchises and stuff like that. I mean, I know they may have the big name and stuff like that, but there's a local person that's bought that franchise that's hiring local people. And I think now more than any other time in our lives that I can remember, it is really critical for that. You look at
I would say, though, not just for the sake of preserving those businesses and for that business owner, but just for the person who wants to have a shopping experience when they want to go into a store and compare one option versus another in person and be able to touch and feel it. If you only do it a tenth of the time because the other 9 times you could buy it online, you're not going to have that opportunity to do it that tenth of the time if you don't move more of your shopping experiences in person.
No, you're not. And that checking the checkbox and, compare these 3 items online is certainly not, I've gone into your store, Jared, many times with a thing that I needed to fit on like a bedpost and I don't even know what the heck it was called. It was that thing that needed
widget.
to get, yeah. And I looked up there and said, hey, that was the widget aisle. It was the perfect.
Right.
You've got the crazy signs up there, but it's,
Right.
widgets and witchcraft and, it's about the experience. It's about the community. It's about making the community that we live in. I mean, I don't want to live in a world where my kids are sitting at a dining room table getting their education. My wife or girlfriend is in her room shopping for Christmas online. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. I mean, I've bust up on eBay a bunch of times, which is, you find something unusual. But we lose an awful lot of the community if we don't support our local businesses. And that's just so critical, I think, at this point in time that everybody gets that message.
Well, and we're all 3 of us, and anyone listening is so extremely lucky to live in this community because this is a very giving community. I mean, the amount of support that the people here show, not just our businesses, but all of the other small family-owned businesses. And you don't have to look any further than the program that Jared is running for the donation to the schools. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's $10,000 that came out from the community and they said, we want to help these schools. We want to donate this money. And that happens all over Annapolis every single day. So we are lucky and blessed to be a part of that.
Well, it is. I remember Monica from Bread and Butter Kitchen started the Feed and Rundle immediately when that happened. And she said, hey, all these all these restaurants are going to have to shutter. Let's give them some money to keep the lights on. They're on dim, but they're on, and there are people that are employed. And let's get food in the hands of people that need food. And it just snowballed there. I mean, and we've got there's a million. I didn't say a million, but there's an awful lot of people like Alan Hyatt, like Dave Marberger, like Jared Littmann, like Monica that are doing this day in, day out here for the community. Some you know about, and many you don't know about that are making it work and making it better. I think, the restaurants have, finally, unfortunately it took a pandemic to get a lot of the restaurants in downtown to realize that we need to come together. We need to be, some glue and work as a group. And I think that's a great thing. I think there's so many ways. I know SOFO has, which is South of Forest Drive South of Forest Drive Business Association is coming together. And I mean, they're doing great things. You guys have just put up one Annapolis posters on the bus stops. You're having, it will be past tense because I'm not going to edit this before that, but there is a movie night at the Bay, near Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits coming up where you're going to do Pirates of the Caribbean. These are all community. There's no cost to that. You come on out there. I think you probably haul out you're probably not hauling out your popcorn machine anymore.
Not right now.
That's
yep, not this year.
Jared, you say you don't know anything about the restaurant business. But there's all sorts of things that are going on for the community. That the community has come together in this really unique time, and you guys certainly have spearheaded it. The message out to everybody that's listening is to make sure that you support these guys, and I use that sort of inclusively and exclusively of the 2 gentlemen that are sitting here. But it's small business. They've got struggles, and others are struggling more than others. Supply chain issues. The lessons are look ahead, plan ahead, and be patient. I think patience is actually a good thing to have. Off the record.
Amen, brother.
I'll point out the employees that we've never shut down. David's never shut down. We've been wearing masks all the time when we're in the store for 6 months now. And, we're doing our best to keep our patience. But, employees are stressed, and they have a tough job right now. And so my big thanks to my staff. I know David feels the same way about his staff. They're doing a great job in a tough time. Probably some of the best staff in town. I guess you guys can vouch for that as well. We think we do.
I'll without a doubt give a huge shout out. When we were closed and our phones were ringing off the hook and we were running 13 miles a day, filling shopping carts full of people's orders and managing the caravan of cars that snaked through our parking lot. Of course, it was nobody but our staff inside the store, and we all communicate via radio. And I still remember coming out with a tear in my eye. I came out over the radio and said, I've never been more proud of a group of people to work with than you guys. And I meant that from the bottom of my heart, because everybody was giving it 1,000%. And it's just what it would have been easy, and probably for some people economically, it would have been better for them to leave and take advantage of all the government money. But they stood in, they rolled up their sleeves, they tied their shoes on extra tight, and they came to work and they busted their butt every single day. I'm proud of what we accomplished. It was a complete shot in the dark for a period of time. No one had ever. There's not a handbook for this. Right. I was proud of that. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
No, they are. And Jared, I mean, you've got typically. I mean, David, yours are older people. I'm not saying old, but I mean they're
calling my staff old.
Yeah, they're more mature. They're over the over 21 crowd. Okay,
that's the proper way to say that.
Let's go with that. The over 21 crowd. But Jared, you've got it awful. You've got a lot of young people there as well, and I don't know where you find them. Maybe they're Chick-fil-A graduates or something like that. But
there was one point in I think this was still April, when we had a few employees choosing to stay home because they were just feeling unsafe, and so the employees who were left were just it was overwhelming. And I had my wife and my 15-year-old. Was she 15 at that point? Yeah, she was already 15 at that point in the store, and we were all working really hard. My wife had a virtual book club one night, and she was just describing what was going on at the store. And we actually got like 3 or 4 applicants the next day from the children of the people in her book club. And that led to other friends that they brought in. So I have to really thank my wife and her group of friends helped us out.
Well, that's funny. I've gotten, I only had one issue at your store when I got bounced out for not having a mask. I was out on a walk.
We solved that one. If you show up without a mask.
Well, that's ultimately what I did. I said,
I have to thank you for the idea, because I didn't really thought about it before you.
Can I just pull my shirt up and go back? I just need an air filter. I know exactly where they are. I said I'm going to make a beeline. And
the irony is,
we don't want to see your belly button by you pulling up your shirt.
It was like no.
We will give you a free courtesy single-use mask.
Yeah. Well, it's and again, that's just something that, again, you've got a fairly tight parking lot. You've got a fairly expansive one where you are, and I mean that's something that you've humped your way across the parking lot. Oh man, I hate and I did that. I walked to breakfast at Main and Market the other day, and I forgot my mask, and I'm like, okay.
If you ever find yourself out and about and you've forgotten a mask, Bay Ridge will be more than happy to give you one. I have them at the front door that I pass out to people. And I've done the same thing. I get out of my car sometimes not thinking, and I go to reach for that door handle of whatever business I'm going in. I'm going, I can't go in. And I have to turn around and go back to my car. So, I mean, I think it's human nature.
It's a mindset getting used to it. And I would think that you two are probably a little bit more used to it now because you're wearing it too often. But I don't, for the most part, except when I go out. But I want to thank you both for taking the time today, which is probably secondary to the leadership you've shown in doing what you're doing with the schools. And the thing for everybody that's listening, get into K&amp True Value, buy stuff by the end of October
31st. Yep.
And donate to the school of your choice, whether it be the one that needs it the most or the one that you want to support the most. Dave Marberger from Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits, always been around for a long, long time, second generation.
Now you're calling me old.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, we'll call a spade a spade, okay? But no, I mean, Bay Ridge Wine and Spirits has been around a long time. I mean, you're a second generation?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's
How many years for
we
your business?
just celebrated our 29th year.
Not quite as old as you.
No, we're in 46.
40s.
You're 46 right now.
And also a second generation.
Obviously started before I joined the business.
you're second generation too, right?
I am.
You haven't gotten into the third
And I think
yet.
we're both the in-laws of the second generation, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is there a third generation coming on for either of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that yet.
At least that's what he says. My son says that is, and he works at the store in the summer times.
How old is
he? 20 right now.
Okay.
So
My son said he was in when he was 8 years old, but I'm not sure I'm going to hold him to that. So we'll see about that.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, John.
This has been an update from Ion Annapolis. Please visit us at ionannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Ion Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.